Hello and welcome to another episode of Nothing Ventured with me, Arish Shah. Today in the studio with me, I have Anton Backman. Anton is a general partner at Play Ventures, an early stage VC fund focused on gaming and related technologies. He's been with Play since its inception in 2018. And before that, he co-founded Wave Ventures, Europe's largest student-driven venture capital fund. Anton's career has revolved around startups and venture capital, never stepping into large corporations. He has contributed to numerous investments in mobile gaming across Europe, the US, and India. And recent shifts in the gaming landscape have not deterred his pursuit of innovative gaming and tech solutions. In today's episode, we talk about whether gaming is still a hot sector.
I think it's fair to say it's not among the hottest industries in VC right now.
Why it's difficult to target the paying players if you're a gaming app.
Very difficult to target the paying players.
How gaming is 50% about the product and 50% about user acquisition.
It's half product and it's half user acquisition and marketing.
How Istanbul is the hottest hub for mobile games today.
Why is Istanbul such a hotbed for mobile games?
And why microdramas follow the mobile gaming playbook.
In a similar way to a game, you're constantly paying for new content. It's either through a subscription or then subscription plus top-ups.
And finally, how analog is really here to stay.
We do love a good analog experience as well, and something that's really tangible and that we can touch.
Let's get straight into it. Hi there. Whilst I've got you for a second, I thought I'd reintroduce myself. My name's Arish. I'm the host of Nothing Ventured, the podcast where I talk to the people behind the stories that make the venture capital ecosystem go round. I'm also the founder of Emerge One, a consultancy that provides fractional CFO support to venture-backed tech startups from seed to Series B and beyond. If you enjoy the podcast, I would really appreciate it if you could subscribe wherever it is that you listen. And should you ever want to have a chat, do reach out to me on LinkedIn or X. I'm always up for a bit of a natter. Right, let's get back into it. Anton, really great to have you in the studio with me. Thank you so much for joining. I really want to dive in because I think, there's a huge amount that you and I have talked about around the mobile and mobile gaming space that I think doesn't, has somewhat fallen out of favor as well, right? Over the last several years. I think you hear a lot less about it. But many believe that mobile gaming is where the biggest opportunities lie. But as the market becomes more saturated, particularly with independent developers entering the scene, how does Play Ventures maintain its competitive edge in identifying truly innovative startups compared to the increasing crowd? And I guess in a world of, almost unlimited AI creation, and I'm seeing, I recently had Sundar Arvind from Mozart AI on, right? Like who's built a consumer app that basically creates music for anyone can create music. It seems like there's going to be an explosion potentially of creativity in this space, which is amazing. So yeah, how do you guys kind of really figure out what's going to be the breakthrough versus what maybe isn't?
Yeah, very.
Which I guess is the one question every VC has to answer at some point, right?
Yeah. No, I love the question. It's I have a very multi-layered answer.
Yeah,
because I think some context is also good to give. I think if we're looking at gaming overall, I think it's fair to say it's not among the hottest industries in VC right now. The emergence of gaming funds at large was largely around the COVID era, with like some of the headlines being kind of record revenues that Fortnite was doing, stuff around just gaming consumption overall going up during COVID because people didn't have anything else to do, and a lot of that enthusiasm from the capital markets took shape in, and from the funds took shape in kind of funding early stage PC and console studios. Now, sort of this is a bit of a hot take on my part, but I think it was a very American thing to react to it that way. Because if you look at some of the success stories in the US gaming space, some of the headlines you think of, or like headline companies you think of as Activision Blizzard as one of the kind of the old schools with World of Warcraft, Diablo, StarCraft, as well as obviously the broader Activision set of games, as well as more recently also being venture-backed, looking at Riot Games.
Yeah.
I do think, however, it's largely what gets cited in the discussion with Riot Games is that the VC exit was actually around $400 million to Tencent. It was Tencent who reaped by far most of the benefits from that business.
Yeah.
They were incredibly smart doing that acquisition very early on. But those, including Fortnite, then remain like very much the poster children of the US gaming space, and largely why I believe that a lot of these gaming funds also were raised. And you could see it from also how the way they allocated capital at the time was very strongly into sort of former Blizzard and Riot developers leaving Riot and Blizzard to build new kind of League of Legends killers or something that were clearly inspired by the games they were previously without really any precedent in venture that, these things actually make sense as venture investments, and at least at large. But then you were looking at kind of the exit landscape in gaming is almost purely mobile. Scopely was big at the time before the exit. Supercell was a big exit. King, also with their sale to Activision. A slew of companies also from Finland and Stockholm, even companies here. Well, and sort of broader Europe. But mobile was mostly dominated here in Europe at the time, mainly because of these companies. So I think mobile got a bit sidelined at the time, even though like...
And just sorry to interrupt. Like one of the things that blows my mind is like the UK gaming industry is one of the biggest sectors in the UK, but no one knows about it. Like it's absolutely
exactly, and there's
remarkable,
incredible household names like Natural Motion also at the time that developed a lot of cutting edge tech that find a lot of stuff in gaming, and a lot of household names definitely in the UK. Also Jagex with RuneScape and so very storied kind of history. But yeah, going back to the point of like mobile still having historically driven most of the exits, mainly also because at the time when mobile gaming had its heyday, being in the early 2010s, you had hundreds of millions of new smartphones coming onto the market.
Sure.
New users being taken up. Meta advertising or Facebook advertising at the time wasn't really a big thing. So CPIs were low. Nobody really knew what they were doing, but everybody were hyperscaling.
Yeah.
And the Helsinki gaming scene was really at the forefront of this. And the reason also you had a lot of companies and good outcomes coming out of it. Fast forward a couple of years later, I would say we're also past kind of the heyday of new gaming funds coming up. And the ones that remain, I would say, clearly found their focus. I like to think we understood kind of what works in the market. We never really went into investing in PC and console. We never really saw the connection between that and startup economics and VC investing, and have been mobile focused really from the get go of the firm. And that's something where we still put all of our gaming efforts in. And I think even mobile isn't completely immune to sort of questioning that, is this still a viable VC investment, given that everybody fights for the same attention. As you say, the market is getting more saturated every year. It's a record amount of new games being sort of submitted to the App Store.
And it's harder to do acquisition marketing,
exactly,
right?
Exactly. And also, post IDFA, very difficult to target the paying players. And that if something, it's at least on paper, it's made it easier for the incumbents to sort of keep their players and sort of keep monetizing the existing player base. But it's not really that simple, in our opinion. It's I think what specifically mobile has also shown that in some of these key categories like puzzle games and mainly sort of match 3 and all of its derivatives, there's incremental innovation happening all the time, like at the outset. And it like early on, when there's been a dominant genre like take match 3, you find incremental innovation at the edges of the gameplay. It might be a side loop in the game. It might be sort of parts of the meta game. And over time, that really erodes into a new genre or category within puzzle. And as a firm, I could also say that we are mainly focused on casual gaming and sort of puzzle being the biggest part of the casual gaming space. Starting out, we were much more sort of genre and category agnostic within mobile, but I think now 8 years in, we're also much smarter about like where can you actually find a venture outcome, which are the categories and genres where Western developers can still be competitive against the Chinese, and if you take categories or genres like RPGs or Forex strategy games, and I'm not going to say China has won the war around those games, but it's a clear trend that in order to sustain the amount of content and sort of the user acquisition investment it's largely been Chinese companies that have been.
So let me just dig into that for a second, right? Like, so what are the characteristics? Is it the genre and the content that ultimately will define the success, or is it the distribution? Is it, is it whatever kind of benefits that the game provides, more generally, etc.? Like, I'm just trying to understand, what makes a breakthrough mobile game? Because if I look, I mean, I'm not a gamer. My daughter is, for example, right? But she plays all sorts. She plays platform games, mobile games. She plays, Roblox or whatever. I don't necessarily see the similarity. Like, I'm still of the Mortal Kombat is great kind of age group. Yeah. Sorry, people, I am that old, right? But like, that's what I grew up with: Tekken and Mortal Kombat, and maybe a bit of Grand Theft Auto and that sort of stuff. But yeah, so what is it? What are the characteristics of a really great mobile game?
Yeah, there's really no silver bullet to this, but I would say how I think about it, it's like it's half product and it's half user acquisition and marketing.
Yeah.
You can't really understate how important it is to be like very good at user acquisition.
Which is so tough at the moment. Yeah.
Very incredibly tough. And given that gaming and mobile gaming specifically has worked kind of so well for such a long time, we actually see an incredible gap in the quality of like marketing talent in mobile games and in the broader consumer app space. This is also probably something we're trying to bridge. But kind of going back to what makes a successful mobile game, it's again it's product and marketing really, and sort of just understanding your players and being highly data driven. There's really no sort of silver bullet there. But I think what's interesting, and it's clearly also showing in sort of the companies we invest in, that sort of gaming has really moved in a way from hub to hub over the time. It's been a VC. It's been a VC category. In the early days of mobile, you would have looked at Helsinki, Stockholm, London, even Silicon Valley with Zynga, and San Francisco as kind of key hubs for mobile games. It was still kind of a very young industry. But as it's matured, that has more or less changed completely. Helsinki is not anymore a hotbed for mobile games. Neither is Stockholm or San Francisco or like any sort of major European hub for that matter.
Is that natural decline, or was that like a conscious shift?
So I have a theory on this, and it's also explained by kind of where I see that is currently the most important hub, which is Istanbul. Then you might ask, why is Istanbul such a hotbed for mobile games? Or first off, like, what have they achieved? Well, they had a massive exit with Peak Games, and that essentially kind of was what kind of birthed the international interest towards investing in Turkish mobile game studios. Last year, we saw the massive 5 billion plus exit of Dream Games, and sort of all of these events, and so Gram Games also earlier, one of Hummingbird's kind of key investments as well. And you might think that, okay, like maybe Peak Games found something that worked really well, and then it's just kind of continued the same way. But there's actually some similarities, I think, to why Finland ended up being a very strong mobile game hub. It's not like they caught a flash in the pan, but the game industry in Finland was actually 30 years in the making before mobile games really blew off. And it started from what's called the demo scene in Helsinki, where you had a lot of these like teams building different software demos with sort of animation, music, coding. And then they kind of gave birth to the first gaming company. So you already had 20, 30 years of game making experience before mobile games came on. And then you kind of had the perfect storm.
So you had the talent, you had the capacity, and you had the experience, essentially.
Exactly. And for Turkey, they've actually been developing these sort of browser-based and sort of Java games focused on like local board games for ages in Turkey. Peak actually also found their first success developing board games as well, or like board games for the browser. So for them as well, it wasn't something that just happened overnight, but it was actually in the making for a very long time. And then it kind of happened to coincide with a lot of the local talent and what the market actually wanted. But what I think is the most important factor in why Turkey is still doing so well all these years later, and why a place like Helsinki is struggling a bit. It's really about how does new talent flow in, and how does the experienced talent kind of rotate within the ecosystem. And when I was working at Slush, Supercell was kind of in its heyday as well. No pun intended regarding one of their games. And they were laser focused on lateral hires from other gaming companies. It was fairly clear from their communications and strategy that they don't have time to train new people, but they actually only need the best from other companies. And it was very often touted by the CEO that our biggest problem is relocation. Like, we can't attract people to Helsinki. It's too cold. But then if I look at my generation, Helsinki, like none of the like top ambitious people went into gaming. You had other companies attracting them on the B2B and consumer side. And now it's obviously AI that is snapping up a lot of the top talent from these markets.
So it lost a generation of potential.
Exactly. And then you run out of talent. This was actually addressed in the Supercell CEO's annual letter last year.
Okay.
So this is something where they failed and didn't have enough foresight. Then you take something like Turkey, where for some reason, mobile casual games is the number one industry for top graduates to go into, or at least one of the top industries to go into. An employer like Dream Games is going to outpay investment banking, private equity, and consulting in Istanbul. It's one of the top places to go into after you graduate from the top universities. So not only do they have talent that have highly relevant experience from these recent exits, and sort of having built games where the strategies of growing those games are still highly applicable in terms of how you operate in today's market, but they have a constant influx of new, ambitious, hardworking talent. All of this kind of primed with 100% on-site culture, and everything runs on Turkish or in Turkish.
Yeah. And which creates a flywheel, because those people then leave, they launch their own.
Exactly.
And they bring up the new. Yeah. Okay. Sure.
Exactly. And that I think is, in terms of gaming in general, is a complete anomaly that you have. This industry is one of the top things to go into. And that's what I firmly believe that's one of the core reasons why Turkey is still doing so well. And I don't see a reason why they wouldn't do well still for the next coming few years.
Yeah. I think to your point, right? Like if you look at the Nordics, what have they become famous for, right? Like, so we talked about this earlier, but Spotify, Aura, Klarna, etc., right? Highly analytical, highly deep tech or fintech kind of businesses. A lot of analytics businesses that came out of the Nordics, which which again are not well known out of the circles that they're well known in, but in those circles they're really well known, right? And so it seems like there's been that shift, exactly to your point, right? Like, so those became the industries maybe which hoovered up that talent. And I think there's clearly, I mean, like I talk about this all the time, right? Like capital follows talent, talent follows capital. You know, if that talent pool has shrunk, then one would expect the capital to shrink back to follow that, right? But the question is how quickly that happens, over what period of time, and whether people have the foresight, to your point around the CEO of Supercell, like whether they have the foresight to try and fix that problem. I mean, it's one of the reasons that, Google, Facebook, etc., set up the campus-style offices, is to attract, maintain, retain, and then continue to attract new talent all the time, right? Like provide the conditions and people come. And it's interesting because we've had quite a few Turkish investors on this podcast. None of them have actually mentioned gaming as a sector that they're focused on necessarily. But I find it incredibly interesting that if you're a Turkish graduate, you are more likely to join a gaming company than an investment bank or private equity. Now, it may be that there's a thin market in the financial services sector or whatever, or various other reasons. There may be, a huge amount of competition in those sectors or whatever, right? And it's something I think about a lot here in the UK and elsewhere in Europe, is that I don't think the startup ecosystem does enough to really attract talent. Like I know, I'm privileged, went to private school. I know a lot of people at private school. I went to a mixer the other day and I was really shocked because I thought, right, like I left school in 1997. At that time, it was lawyer, doctor, accountant. That was your career path. And I met, there was quite a few entrepreneurs there, a lot younger than me, would have left school in 2015, let's say. And I was having this conversation with them. I was like, I feel like post 2008, maybe there's been more entrepreneurs coming out of my old school. And they're like, maybe, but not because of the school. The school was still pushing the lawyer, doctor, accountant kind of route. And so I feel like, if Turkey is doing that right, there's something to be learned, right? Like if we if we want more people within the ecosystem to be, really building the next, whether it's a game, whether it's a B2B, it doesn't really matter what the product is, but we got to do more to kind of inspire that talent. I actually recently had my niece who's just gone to Warwick University. A friend of hers in the second year has literally dropped out of school. He's a computer science undergrad, dropped out of school, offered a job in San Francisco of $250,000, and he's gone, right? Like, we don't have that here, or I would argue anywhere in Europe.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I mean, there's obviously different things companies can do to try to attract this, but I do agree that it probably requires some kind of a coordinated effort as well. So that it's not like one company in isolation, but this is something that then all of the other VC funded and big gaming companies in Turkey are, because they're still competing for talent.
Yeah.
Like make no mistake. And then it kind of raises the bar for everyone. Like, what are you offering these people? And like at one point in time, it was the fact that, when the Turkish lira was going up and down, the gaming companies were paying them in USD. So that was like already a massive reason to join them. And obviously now you're seeing a lot more of the Turkish diaspora also going into building tech companies to SF directly. So I think that sort of probably the playing field between like are people going into gaming or tech is probably going to get a lot more leveled. But gaming in Turkey for sure like was a massive pioneer, like attracting people into the startup sector.
Yeah.
Continues to do so because I like to think that a lot of the Turkish success companies, they were built in this era and they are kind of primed to also thrive in that era versus some of the counterparts from Finland and Sweden that were maybe scaled at a time where user acquisition wasn't as difficult or like providing continuous content to game wasn't as difficult as it is today. The Turks they started operating already in a very difficult market. And that's why they're still thriving.
Yeah. Yeah. Challenge breeds success, right? Look, I mean, we've spoken a huge amount about mobile gaming, right? And plays focus on that. But there's been a shift, certainly in terms of your thesis, towards micro dramas and real money gaming. What do you think are the trade-offs in pursuing the latest content trends whilst ensuring your investments kind of remain stable, especially in a market where player safety is increasingly scrutinized? And I guess, again, the way I think about it, and maybe I'm just an old codger, right? Like, I can just about sit and doom scroll Instagram for a while. I'm not sure I could do micro content like micro dramas. That does feel odd. But
have you tried?
I haven't, and this is what I was going to say, right? Like, I can imagine it working in India. So if you look at this podcast, for example, by far the biggest demographic is out of India, right? The subscribers. And the reason for that, I think, is because obviously you have a huge population, clearly, but that's a population where work is often sporadic, right? Like there are, you go into I always talk about this, right? You go into a clothes shop in India, you've got one person that will show you the clothes, one person that will help you fit them. And then when you go to actually buy the clothes, you have someone that gives you a chit. The chit goes to the next person. You pay that person. The next person writes you a receipt. The receipt goes to the next person. There's a security guard that will let you out once he's seen the receipt or whatever, right? But what I basically mean is there's like 5 or 6 people there who are, intermittently busy for like 10 seconds or 20 seconds. What are they doing the rest of the time? They're on their mobile, they're watching, they're playing, etc. So I would love to kind of get your take on why you moved into that and how that works.
Definitely. So if we look at the microdrama space and the real money gaming space as examples, they're really just parts of the broader sort of consumer thesis or the playable app thesis that we've had now for the past 3 years, and then really sort of been doubling down on. And the reason why we expanded our focus, it felt like a very natural expansion of what we were already doing. You had these mobile gaming teams operating the biggest gaming market of the world, and also like mobile gaming is, even though the industry has had its headwinds, it's bigger than it's ever been, and it's still growing every year. And when looking at sort of, okay, what else grows this way? What else is grown and maintained through like best-in-class performance marketing? The whole mobile app space. This goes back again to like, back in 2023, why is 70% of App Store revenue just games? Like, can these other things just monetize? And again, like, that's bullshit. Of course they can monetize. It hasn't been done properly. And when we look at sort of consumer app investments, it's not like any type of app would fall within our focus, but it's something where we the digital first product. It's digital content that can be scaled easily. Micro dramas fall very easily into that because, again, you're in a similar way to a game, you're constantly paying for new content. It's either through subscription or then subscription plus top-ups, which is a very kind of typical way to consume these and a very typical model. It's kind of straight from the mobile gaming playbook in many ways. When it comes to real money gaming, it's something that we have done quite selective investments in. Hasn't been sort of a huge focus, but again, why we went into that space with select investments was that we saw, again, something that is kind of a sister industry to the video gaming space. They come from the same roots, but over time have grown very much apart. But they still kind of are based on the same fundamentals of obviously building.
So when you talk about real money gaming, you're talking about gambling, essentially.
Yes, exactly, gambling. Similar way that in the thesis that we see that a lot of this stuff is being done inefficiently, also because it's been a very profitable industry for a very long time, and sort of incumbents haven't been touched until sort of more recently, when it's been more sort of economically viable to come in as a startup into the space with kind of all of the tools you have available and being able to more like easily go and compete up against the bigger ones. And there we also just had a very strong thesis about like there's a number of things ranging from product and marketing from the playbook of mobile games that you can take into this industry and ultimately also build better and safer products for your users as well. But then again, jumping back to the micro dramas, out of a lot of the consumer verticals that we've looked at, I think it has probably been one of the more explosive ones in the past couple of years. And it was something we identified very early on that we want to also be a part in this race. And we were lucky enough to back a company called Ilo out of India, which product Story TV is still the number one microdrama app in India, at least at the time of recording of this podcast. And even in December, briefly dethroned ChatGPT for about a month. For becoming the biggest app in India.
It's ridiculous.
For a month. So that the microdramas have really taken that market by storm. A lot of like to the reasons you said, but I think also to add there, obviously the highly sort of localized content that Indians have been enjoying for like through Bollywood and kind of the broader film industry over there, hyper localized. And also the vernacular across all the languages as well. So
I mean, just thinking about it, I was sitting there going, yeah, would I ever watch a microdrama? And like, maybe I will, right? But actually, when I think about the whole of Southeast Asia, LATAM, Africa, and the 54 countries or however many countries there are in Africa, I think it's 54. I keep getting that number wrong. But, they have a long history of consuming drama type programs. I mean, not that Europe doesn't or the US doesn't, but the telenovelas in LATAM.
Yes.
In India, you have a lot of kind of the mythical stories that are then televised, etc. Right? I can like thinking about it, I can well imagine that those would work really well as micro content, and in a way that I do see even today on Instagram. Like I have these like, oh, have you heard this story about Vishnu or whatever? Right? Like I can imagine that translating incredibly well for those markets, and especially where those whether it's Bollywood or Nollywood in Nigeria, right? Like those markets are already massive, and there is a high propensity to consume that sort of content, and this is I guess feeding into the shift in trend, right? Where TikTok, Instagram, etc. like exists. Short form content, short form media is clearly a thing. Yeah, it makes sense, right? Like,
and you'd almost be surprised how nitty gritty it can be. That is this thing going to be a hit or not? Because you would look at Jio Hotstar, probably one of the, if not the biggest streaming service in India, that also tried to enter the market with a microdrama product. They essentially tried to kind of microdramify their existing content.
Yeah, sure.
Which from an episodic and like narrative structure just didn't fit
work.
the mold. So that didn't work out at all.
You have to create new content in order
You have to create the suspense in the first 10 seconds.
Yeah,
otherwise you're going to lose the viewer. And this is something that the sort of companies who were born into this space understood and have been sort of plowing through all of the legacy actors and sort of obviously our hope is, I think, obviously we want a gun for an IPO, but I would say I'd be surprised if some of the media incumbents wouldn't be looking at these assets already to add their portfolio, because a lot of the airtime is being lost in India to these. And really for Ilo, what I think makes India special here is not like these microdramas are a thing of last year. They've been around for a couple of years, mainly driven by Chinese companies, both on mainland China, where is a massive market, but also in the US, that is also more or less 100% dominated by these Chinese companies operating in the US. Companies like DramaBox, Short Reel, and they've been scaling for a couple of years, and that is an immensely competitive market. But then looking at India, which really exploded on last year's side, you kind of have what they had going for them was geopolitical arbitrage. The Chinese companies not being able to operate there. So that was kind of a perfect storm for Ilo and Story TV at the time, that you had a proven content format in a country where like the consumption habits on mobile content are not too indifferent from China, and then kind of running local content. Obviously, the Indian cost structure is also very beneficial for this.
Sure.
And I don't want to misquote now, but I do believe that for some of these top actors, like one season of a series probably pays back in a few minutes of it going live.
God.
So it's because it's not too expensive to produce.
Yeah,
and that's also like just from an actor perspective, it's like, or from an acting industry perspective, it's like created a ton of new jobs for kind of the more long tail list of actors that you have in these countries.
Yeah, because you don't need to go for the Amitabh Bachchans or whoever it is, right? Like you don't need to go for the big name stars. They, at some point they will enter the scene, I'm sure, right? But you also want to keep your content fresh, which means that you want a wider variety of people performing. And
they also act as kingmakers for these actors as well, where the actor becomes known for like, and there's even IP created around this stuff, which was maybe something I wouldn't have sort of put my buck on in the beginning. But now there's clearly like IP also being formed around these, because they're clearly here to stay.
Well, there'll be merch, there'll be toys, there'll be like all the usual kind of stuff that I guess comes out of these sort of things. Look, I think it is super interesting. I've long tried to curtail the amount of television I watch. I'm not sure if this would actually help or hinder that ambition. I've got a feeling I may end up watching more if I were to move to short form.
Let me know when you try.
Okay, you'll have to give me the tip on which. I mean, it sounds like Ilo, but what is the right app to download? But and just kind of tying off on this point, right? Like because I do wonder. Content trends have shifted a lot, right? Obviously, we know that attention spans have decreased, and that's why people consume X, they consume Instagram, they consume like short form content. People aren't reading as much. People, ignore adverts now in long programs, and often actually are sitting watching a program whilst on their phone. I guess the question is, we can't really get shorter, right? Like, so where does it go from here? I guess maybe interactive, but I mean, where do you see the future of that industry?
Short form for sure is here to stay. I think, and yeah, it does affect our attention spans, and I also don't think that the work the LLMs do for us necessarily also are a very positive side of that trend. I do like to believe to some extent to the silent powers of like these circular trends in a way that things 20 years ago are somehow relevant again today. And I think actually we can see these signals from some of the unlikeliest places, which is Pokemon cards.
Yeah.
And if you look at like the complete resurgence of physical Pokemon cards in the past few
after
years.
NFTs, yeah.
Exactly. Sure. And again, I'm not saying, or like, I actually have a horse in this race as well. So I'm like happy if people invest more in Pokemon cards, etc. But there's clearly been, with kind of the abundance of digital content that we have nowadays, I think we're seeing a sort of counterbalance from the analog world. I'm personally a massive fan of everything analog, everything from retro consoles to like old cartridges and old music players and records and stuff. And I'm like, I think it will also be naive to think that we would completely go back to something like that, at least for a while.
Of course.
But sort of, I think this is still proven that us as humans, we do love a good analog experience as well, and something that's really tangible and that we can touch.
I do not disagree with you at all. I'm like one of the strong hopes I have for the AI era is that actually it allows people to unleash their human creativity a huge amount more. Like there's I've been asked, like, why don't I now turn this into an AI created podcast so that I can release every day, right? Or every 3 hours, for argument's sake. Like I don't even know how often.
And I can have an LLM listening to it.
Yeah, you can exactly. That would be so hilarious.
Yeah. And then that one, and then that speaks to one of my agents who summarizes all the stuff.
Post everything on LinkedIn.
Yeah, exactly.
This is what I learned from the fucking podcast.
There's a circular economy where I never open my LinkedIn.
Exactly.
But for some reason, everything gets happened.
Please, if that could happen, I would pay good money to never have to open LinkedIn again.
Something I still want to add to that point, and I think if analog's the one part, I think we're definitely seeing signals also on like people craving for the IRL aspect as well.
Yeah, sure.
One of our investments, it's a French company called Time Left, and what they're building essentially a platform for IRL meetings.
Nice.
But they've started out with a subscription service, and what you do is that once a week, or nowadays twice a week, and they have some other events as well, but platform organizes a dinner for you with 7 strangers.
Yeah.
And then you go and have a dinner with these strangers, and you get to like anonymously vote afterwards, like, did I like this person? Did I not like this person? And then kind of also learns what are people you want to interact with.
Sure.
And then it's like, it's been very popular, for example, with expats who don't know people in a new city, and introduced a running club as well for the platform.
Yeah.
And there's competition coming up for this, for Time Left as well. And like we're also like, even if we spend our time with digital products growing through performance marketing on Meta, we're huge believers in IRL. And a lot of these like strategies of building companies can also be utilized in these like platforms building for real life encounters as well. So I think we're just trying to strike a balance in all of this.
I don't disagree at all, right? Like we've had on the podcast, like a couple of things. We had at the time she was still she was a VC investor with AXA Ventures. Then she joined Hopin. So she didn't come on the podcast during that time, but obviously we had that massive kind of drive to online presence, and then immediately kind of COVID relaxed. It was very clear that people really, really valued that kind of IRL experience, right? And then to your point around these kind of dinners, so a friend of the podcast, Matthew Stafford, who has, he's been on the podcast, but he runs, alongside his co-founder, Kate, he runs dinners called 9 Others, which is simply him and 8 other people. And it's just a conversation. Typically it's kind of founders, operators, whatever, but it's, it's there to just meet people you wouldn't have met before. And it's a really wholesome experience, right? And I think it is an experience that that became super undervalued. And I think people are now realizing how important it is. We're seeing also that kind of shift back to office more and more, right? Like one of the companies I've invested in mentioned that they've now moved to 3 days in office. And most of their team are now coming in 4 or 5 days, but the 3 days are mandatory. And we all know that there are benefits, right, to being in person in office. Not to say I'm still also a big believer that remote can work, but like I think there is massively a case for that sort of stuff.
Yeah, and you had like to that point, you had several cohorts of people who were uni students at the time of COVID, and they kind of missed the campus experience.
My daughter was one of them. Yeah,
exactly. And now partly also, or like largely also because of the AI boom, I think we're at least in the AI space, we're seeing a lot more young founder teams.
Yeah,
like very young teams coming onto market, and they went through this, and kind of their counter reaction to this is that they're 100% on site building these teams.
Interesting.
They want to be in the office, be it SF, be it Helsinki, be it Stockholm, and they're kind of taking a very kind of counter take to what the previous generations who have kind of already gotten used to, like I have to be able to be remote because I want to enable the other parts of my life. But for the young 20-somethings who still don't have a lot of other responsibilities, like this is everything, and they're kind of taking back a lot of that lost time.
Yeah. If you listen to any podcast with Scott Galloway, I think he talks about this all the time, right? Like for a young person, there's nothing more important. Be in the office. It's where you'll meet peers. It's how you'll progress your career. It's also where you may even meet your future spouse or partner. And there's just a huge amount of benefit to it. I think generationally, like for someone at my age, it's quite nice not to have to go into the city every day, but I go into the city whenever I need to, right? But I think when you're younger, you have the energy, you have the ability and the opportunity. You should absolutely take it. And I guess actually, if I think about the place where I see the most mobile games being played, it's probably on the tube on the way to work in the morning. So yeah, I guess you guys probably have there is a benefit to you advocating that as well.
Exactly. I just came back from Japan last week, and the amount of time I saw people playing Block Blast on the subway there was pretty astounding.
That's for me, I still remember like when it was still a daily commute for me, like probably about 8, 9, 10 years ago. Candy Crush was like, that was it. That's all you'd see. It was that, or it was gosh, what's it called? The coin game.
Coin Master.
No, it was like the Indiana Jones kind of running game where you're like,
yeah.
I can't remember what it's called, but yeah.
Temple Run.
Temple Run. That's, exactly. Temple Run. Okay, shifting tack a little bit, right? So the landscape of real money gaming is shifting rapidly alongside new regulation, right? We were just talking about this a little bit as well. But many argue that, increased regulation ultimately drives players to unregulated markets, right? And we know this, we've seen this, whether it is drugs, whether it is gambling, whether it is, adult entertainment, whatever it might be, right? So how does Play Ventures approach investments in this area, balancing kind of potential returns against the ethical considerations and, I think importantly, adherence to kind of emerging regulatory environments? And what we've always seen in Europe, especially with digital, is that we tend to kind of go maybe index a bit too far and then pull it back rather than taking an incremental approach. How do you guys think about it?
Yeah, no, good question. So first off, how we approach, I would start by saying very selectively. Out of 100 portfolio companies, I would say 2 companies fall into this focus. And how we think about it and how we approach in terms of because in terms of the regulatory, you obviously have the regulated markets and the what you would call the white market operators, the ones who operate in a regulated market and follow the regulations.
Yeah.
Now we operate firmly in that space. Sort of companies that naturally follow the regulations of whichever market they operate in. A good example is Midnight here in the UK, one of the top challenger brands here in the country. And then you have kind of the broader sector of like gray market operators where you might be operating license from some island nation somewhere.
Yeah.
And
I can probably guess which ones, but yeah. Sure.
Exactly. Isle of Man and sort of what you have. And then you would have the black market operators that don't really operate with any license and just are like, there's no recourse to anyone if they just decide to keep your money. We stay away from that. And sort of these are obviously huge markets as well, specifically the gray one with the broader crypto casino space, like Stake and Rollbit and what have you. And there's a lot of like tangential information online where you can see how much these companies are making. And make no mistake, these are massive enterprises, but sort of I would say very hard for an institutional venture capitalist like us. So we firmly operate where kind of the white market operators operate. To the question about like how regulation affects kind of in and outflow of players into like offshore operators and like staying with this is obviously very topical in the UK with recent tax increases in the budget for UK based operators, which then led from an incumbent point of view into like cost cuts, both on marketing, just to make sure that the economics still work at scale, but which interestingly also opened up an opportunity for sort of upstart operators such as Midnight and go and get that market share because they've been thinking about their economics in a more prudent way from the get-go. But going back to the point about like, do these cannibalize each other? I don't have the data at hand, but I think it's fair to assume that the more regulation is put on, the less levers the regulated actors have at their disposal in terms of like keeping their players. And it's these actors that have to follow sort of safe gambling and sort of anti sort of harm type of guidelines for these businesses, not the sort of gray market operation, the offshore operators elsewhere. And these are usually targeted towards sort of the bigger spenders, the high rollers or the whales as well. And when you start imposing over tight restrictions where these people want to continue gaming, they might shift over to someone that doesn't impose these restrictions. So I'm not the world's biggest expert on this because we approach this industry more in a way that we're kind of outsiders from the gambling industry. We come from the gaming industry and sort of we make select investments where we feel like these companies can take the playbook from gaming or mobile gaming and ultimately build a better experience for their users, a safer experience for their users. But looking at the broader industry and the regulatory, if looking at some of the kind of information you can find out about, for example, how much stake is doing in countries where casino is not even legal, like India, it's like astounding amounts of money they're making. So it's like I feel like they are sometimes very kind of short-term decisions that these governments make, where it's like, hey, let's ban this completely, and you get kind of the thumbs up from the court of public opinion that's, hey, we shouldn't be encouraging this.
Yeah, but then there's some millions of users that are...
Yeah, it's still happening. And this is quite prolific with the real money ban in India last year, where you had a sizable audience engaging, hundreds of millions of monthly actives engaging with real money skill gaming, all operating on sort of local actors. First, they increased the GST tax. The companies, obviously it was a big hit, but they complied and everything kind of still worked. Then out of nowhere, in the span of 6 hours, they introduced a nationwide ban on real money gaming, skill gaming, and then that kind of wiped out all of the kind of local actors. And then subsequently, that player behavior has now transported over to offshore operators,
to the black market,
because it's not, at the end of the day, it's not hard to access these operators if you have a VPN or whatever. And that's like, it's very table stakes for a sort of internet native user to have that. Doesn't matter as much for us as we focus firmly on kind of the regulated markets and sort of large regulated predictable markets like the UK. But when it comes to these more emerging markets that have a very young user base, looking at like LATAM, Southeast Asia, India also, and Africa, where a lot of these markets are really just taking shape, it's potentially has a lot of detrimental effects down the road if you're taking too strict of an approach to win the opinion of the court of the public opinion, but then the actual outcome is that you're actually just flowing a lot of player funds offshore.
Yeah. You're masking the problem essentially, right?
Yeah.
Like you can feel good, but actually you can't even capture the data around those that are essentially circumventing the system and therefore moving out. I mean, like I find it really interesting. I mean, I've never really gambled in my life. It's not something that I've ever found interesting. What I do find really intriguing is in the UK, like a lot of the advertising I see these days is around real money gaming, like a huge amount.
Yeah.
Like inordinate amount on both the TV now, even on supposedly what were free streaming apps, but now Amazon is no longer, right? Like Prime, you still have adverts, and Now TV, which kind of shows a lot of Sky content. Like there is just a huge amount of real money. And I just wonder, I remember when I used to live in Papua New Guinea, it was one of the real problems that we had was come payday, like a lot of the staff would go straight down to the bookies. And it was a real challenge to stop, not that it was our job to stop them, but, to stop people essentially gambling away their entire kind of earnings on this. And so actually that's where regulation creates potentially massive harm, because it pushes those that can least afford it into the black market, black hat players or actors, which you
it's like everybody loses.
Yeah, you got no guardrails. Yeah. 100%.
So I do think these again follow circular trends where it's like you go a bit back and forth and try to find the balance. As obviously online gambling hasn't existed for forever yet. It's also still a fairly young industry.
Sure,
it's just a couple of decades old. But sort of as we're seeing these markets mature, regulators seeing a couple more terms going, I do want to think that they're going to find a balance, and we're seeing this now in Finland.
Yeah,
so Finland has been a haven for gray market operators for the longest time because there's just been a state monopoly running it, but sort of we've been targeted by Maltese casinos since like the dawn of online gambling, and now it's getting regulated. in Finland, where you have the outside sort of brands coming into the market, but there are very strict guardrails into how you market to Finnish players and how you think how you're allowed to bonus players and incentivize. So I think it's just about like a part of this maturation process that we're seeing more and more countries just taking a regulatory approach where they kind of look at what works and what hasn't worked.
Yeah, push and pull.
Yeah. And that's kind of the long-term trend we're also betting on, that over time we will get rid of these gray market operators and looking at a sort of highly regulated market, as it should be.
Look, I mean, Anton, I think we could probably carry on for another hour and a half. But sadly, as all good things, this also must come to an end. But I have a couple of questions which I ask all of my guests. So the first is, what is one thing that you have a contrarian conviction about from any area of life, whether that's work, politics, socially, or home?
Can I say two things, one business and one non-business?
Please go for it. Because normally no one has anything to say. No one can think of anything contrarian these days.
Well, I hope this is contrarian. For business, if you're a consumer internet company across apps and games and anything where you market to consumers, if you don't have a well-oiled and well-functioning performance marketing stack, then you're just not going to make it. And the reason I believe this is contrarian, it was only a few weeks ago when I think, and this is again, a very US thing, not sort of, nothing against my sort of US friends, but there is more of an allergy towards performance marketing in the US. And this was again surfaced by Bill Gurley on X.
Interesting.
By saying that something along the lines of like, you're just renting your user base for as long as you run paid ads. But I think you're really missing the forest from the trees if you think about it that way. And I actually attribute a lot of this hate towards performance marketing to I think it was a hit piece by TechCrunch, like maybe 10 years ago, essentially detailing that 40 to 50% of VC dollars go to Facebook marketing.
Sure,
and that kind of left a sour taste in everyone's mouth.
Well, it's still a trope. It's very much still a meme. Yeah, for sure.
Exactly. But there's so much more nuance to that now, like 10 years in the making. Like Meta is just one of the channels. You have a ton of other channels. Social media, yes, was a thing. Because of TikTok and short form, social media is a much bigger thing now than it was 10 years ago. We essentially spend hours and hours a day scrolling Reels, TikTok, being on Instagram. And sort of, if you want to be visible to your users, you got to be on those platforms. And it's like, there's this forever quest or endless quest for like viral stunts and like reaching, like becoming the zeitgeist through virality, but you're not going to sustain that if you don't have a well-functioning performance marketing engine. And to be clear, like I don't mind if people like hate performance marketing, like go ahead and not do it, because then that means that my companies acquire users for cheaper.
Yeah, sure.
So please, Bill Gurley, go ahead and please promote performance marketing being bad.
Yeah.
I think people tend to forget that, like people think Temu came from nowhere. Well, no, they spent $2 billion on performance marketing every year.
Sure.
Why did TikTok become a thing in the US? People maybe did like missed this, but the biggest channel for TikTok was paid ads on Snapchat in the US.
That's hilarious.
So they essentially outcompeted one of their competitors through their own marketing, through their own platform. It's insane, but it's so funny when you don't
start. You cannot, in today's world, you cannot, as a consumer business, stand out from day one without spending money.
No, we see a funny trend on TikTok. It's yesterday's news tomorrow. There's always a new trend.
Yeah.
So it's like it's impossible to sustain if you're not there always. And it's like, it's not cheap, but at least you're guaranteed to be visible to your user base. And then it's up to you how good your ad creative is.
Exactly. And if it doesn't work, then you either have to shift or you figure out, well, actually, this is the wrong product in the wrong market, trying to do the wrong thing.
We have portfolio companies testing over 10,000 ad creatives per week.
Wow.
Which is insane. But
that's mad.
So that's my business contrarian opinion, my non-business related contrarian opinion. And I'm sorry if you're going to get any hate mail after this, but I think that Friends is by far the most overrated comedy show of all time. I think the humor is very simple and basic. Yeah, simple can be fun, but it's not. It's very shallow. There's no character development across any of the characters in that show.
They don't grow ever.
It's the first episode is essentially the same as the last one. Sure. It's just that Ross gets Rachel. That's essentially it.
Yeah, that's like literally whatever it was. The only 10 seasons of like, is Ross going to end up with Rachel?
The only mildly interesting and well-written character is Chandler. But I'll leave it there.
But I would argue that the reason he is mildly interesting is because Chandler, Matthew Perry, who played Chandler, himself was an incredibly complex
Yes, and the humor was a lot more complex than the other characters.
Yeah, 100%. Interesting. I would I don't think I would massively disagree with that. I mean, I think it's one of those programs that I would today like just have sat on the background and not pay attention to. But I mean, I think if I was watching it from scratch today, I'd probably find it boring. In fact, it's one of the few sitcoms that I've never gone back to, whereas something like Parks and Recreation, I go back to all the time, or Brooklyn Nine-Nine and 30 Rock and all of these.
It's very much a product of its time, in my opinion. And what I do credit it is that I feel like it captured the kind of the zeitgeist of the pre-financial crisis nihilism of the early 2000s. Where it's very lighthearted topics.
There's no depth.
No, there's no depth. Really. But that's I feel very strongly about that.
Yeah.
To the detriment of basically all of the people in my social circle loving that series.
It's okay, man. They'll get over it. Cool. So last question. I mean, so that we can get to know the real you, and it feels like I honestly do. I honestly do think I understand a lot more about you now. But what is something that moves you the most emotionally?
Good piece of film, music, or video game. I come from a family of artists, and sort of I've been surrounded by that like throughout my life. I'm a massive film buff. I would say that's my biggest hobby in general. And then,
favorite film?
My favorite film is Apocalypse Now.
Interesting.
And I have a lifelong love for The Lord of the Rings, both in book and film format. I rewatch the extended trilogy an unhealthy amount of times every year.
Yeah, sadly, my daughters also make me do that. Which thoughts on Harry Potter?
I mean, I grew up with Harry Potter. I love it. It's you can't compare it in terms of like depth and sort of the literary impact the book has had, like from pop culture standpoint, for sure.
Yeah, sure.
It's a generational pop culture phenomenon. But I have a massive soft spot in my heart for Harry Potter. But the two most important sort of fan properties for me is Lord of the Rings #1 for sure, and Star Wars. But Harry Potter comes in as a very close third.
That's really interesting. I read Lord of the Rings when I was probably about 9. I love Star Wars, absolutely. Not so much the prequels and the sequels, but like the actual Star Wars, the trilogy. And interestingly, for me, I love film 100%. I would say probably my favorite film is, well, I have a number, but I think Shawshank Redemption.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Absolutely love Goodfellas. Goodfellas is probably actually, I would say Goodfellas is probably my favorite film of all time.
The Shawshank Redemption is funny for Finns because we still do it to a certain extent. Like we don't dub films.
Yes.
But we did translate the film titles.
Okay.
For in Finnish. And Shawshank Redemption's Finnish name, it's like, if I freely translate it from Finnish, it's Rita Hayworth, The Key to Escape. So it kind of gives away the whole film.
That's super interesting because actually I think the title, because it's a Stephen King novel, I want to say. I can't remember who wrote it.
Yeah, I can't recall.
But it is called something like Rita Hayworth and the Shawshank Redemption. Like I think that's the title of the short story. But that really does give away the whole bloody thing. And look, I mean, I think I've mentioned it on the podcast before, but if you're into literature and you love Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter for that matter, you should absolutely read Terry Pratchett and his Diswell collection, which I think is my favorite of all time.
I got some of those books from my uncle when I was a kid, and they were also one of my kind of early entrants into those worlds. And another, maybe now that I'm here in the UK and something that's worth noting, I would say, and my comments on Friends humor is that probably the thing that had the biggest impact on my sense of humor is that I was gifted at a very early age a DVD of, or it was a VHS of Monty Python and the Flying Circus.
Amazing, yeah.
Which was obviously then followed by Blackadder.
And I was going to say, that was literally what I was going to say next.
I like to think that one of the biggest gifts my dad gave me was this early entry into British humor, which still is one of the bedrocks of how I find things funny.
And it's incredible how many people in Europe find British humor really hard to understand, right? Because it is all wordplay, it is all sarcasm, it's all irony, like it isn't slapstick.
There's an incredible amount of depth that you just don't.
It's incredible. And Rowan Atkinson, just phenomenal. Anton, this has been an absolute blast. For the audience, where can they find you online? You on LinkedIn, Twitter, X? Where's the best place for them to find you on the internet?
Yeah, no, I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Twitter and X. My email is anton@play.vc. I'm generally on all platforms.
Okay, amazing. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been honestly a real blast. Thank you so much.
Awesome. No, thanks for having me.